This might just be the most consequential model I've ever owned or reviewed. In mid-2024, Atlas announced O-Scale Steam would return to their offerings for the first time in about 14 years in the form of some new-to-Atlas 280s. In September of 2025, these models finally arrive. The 280s are new to Atlas, but the tooling was previously produced by Weaver Models. Atlas got the rights to use MTH's Proto Sound 3 sound system and DCS in their engines a few years ago, and now we are seeing our first taste of Atlas-produced Proto Sound 3.0 steam power. And oh boy, this is a lot to go over. The Atlas 280s are based off an Illinois Central class of 280. These models probably look familiar to anyone in the HO or N-scale worlds, as Bachmann produces HO and N-scale models based off the same class of IC280. And those models are among the most popular in HO and N-scale, and are used to represent just about every road name imaginable. Now, these 280s are scale, but it's worth noting that the models have no road-specific alterations aside from paint to make them more accurate or scale to the various different road names and 280 classes they are painted for. I don't think this is an issue myself, as one of the great strengths of these models is that they are close enough to so many road names appearances already that Atlas can produce them in mass with only paint needed to differentiate the models to keep costs relatively low. And for O-Scale Steam, these are on the cheaper end, announced at $799.99 MSRP, now at $899.99 MSRP after recent political changes. The models will navigate O36 curves, which is another bonus in the O-scale world, as oftentimes even small scale steam will need O42 or wider curves to operate. So these Atlas 280s will fit on more layouts than most full-scale models. O-scale steam has a certain standard collectors expect, and primarily everything exists in one of two tiers: O-gauge, smaller, less detailed, durable models, and O-scale, highly detailed, full-scale models with more delicate parts and a rather high bar for meeting the bare minimum the community expects. Atlas, as stated, has been out of the O-scale steam world for quite a while, and their past experience is extremely limited. So this really is a new section of the market for Atlas, and it shows. So let's start there, the appearance of the models. The engines have received a lot of new details since they were previously run by Weaver, and Atlas did really an exceptional job with it. They did succeed in bringing the model's visual appearance almost up to par with MTH Premier steam engine standards, and really, I don't think it'd be fair to fault them for not matching them perfectly, as the tooling is old and would have needed a lot more changes to make everything on par with a modern MTH Premier steam engine. Notable differences include the cab roof. The vents are molded in and do not open. The walkways along the boiler lack safety tread. The tender lacks truck chains, and even the rivets on the tender look different and a bit more toyish than rivets on MTH tenders. In a way, it looks like an MTH Premier engine matched with a scale Rail King tender. Now, there are two items Atlas could have realistically improved, and this is why I think it's obvious Atlas is really out of touch with the O-scale steam market at present. The coal load is plastic. A plastic coal load on an $800-900 model is not only odd, it's outright unheard of in the modern market. It's easy enough to add a real coal load yourself, which I'll be doing before the long-term review of these models, but I still think Atlas should have done this from the factory for the price. And the other item is the pilot wheels. They are notably machined wheels, not cast, which is a huge improvement over even my $1,900 Lionel Baldwin Standard Decapods pilot wheels. but the color? It's excusable on the tender wheels, but the pilot wheels, which are exposed, Atlas could have improved the looks of the model greatly by merely painting the sides of the pilot wheels to match the drivers. Really, if Atlas fixed these two items, I think the visual appearance of the models would be substantially improved. But that is not to say they look bad as is. Simply could be better for very little cost. The paint is absolutely top-notch. It matched the paint colors and quality on my MTH Premier Proto Sound 3 Western Maryland Steam Power to a degree I honestly did not expect. I'm really quite impressed here. The finish on the paint is also of an equal quality and just might be better than that which is on some of my MTH Premier models. Side by side with MTH and Lionel Steam Power, these Atlas 280s do fit in rather well, and once the coal load is added and pilot wheels painted, I think they will fit in perfectly. Now, let's move on to operations. The models did stutter and stall at slow speed, 5 scale miles per hour and under, for the first minute or two of operations out of the box. But after only a couple of laps on my small layout, both were running smooth and even managed to cross the switch for my engine house at low speeds with no stalling, something many of my similarly sized engines from MTH struggle with. The engines pulled and pushed my MTH Premier heavyweight coaches no problem through the curves, so I have no concerns with the pulling power of these little 280s. It's plenty for an engine of their size. The smoke output is, well, let's just say it definitely fits in with my MTH models. The sound department is another, however, that there are obvious signs Atlas is very unfamiliar with the Steam market. First off, let's touch on the PFA sequence. Atlas announced these with passenger announcements, not freight, which struck many as odd, if not downright bad. I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, as they did model the Southern 630, which is known in the tourist era for pulling excursions, and the models here are Western Maryland H7B representations, which were known to pull mixed trains on the WM from time to time. So, while odd, it wasn't totally unreasonable. Now, the sound sets on my Western Maryland models are a bit corny. They announced the arrival and departure of a train on track 1 and dubbed this the Western Maryland, as if it's the name of a crack passenger train. The other sounds, exhaust, air pumps, crew chatter, bell, whistle, all are stock MTH PS3 sound files, and they sound fine, but they use the same ones on all of the road names offered. Yes, PS3 allows you to change the sound sets, but not everyone has the hardware at home to change it themselves. So while I am happy with my WM H7Bs having single chime whistles as the real H7Bs had, not everyone is going to be as thrilled with these whistles on, say, their Southern 630, an engine that is well documented in the excursion era and is not exactly known for wearing hooter whistles. A little prototype research and sound selection would have gone a long way here, Atlas. That covers the engine's looks, operation, and sounds, but as I said, there is a lot to go over here. Now, on to the potential of these models. As I said, there are a couple of improvements Atlas could make in the next run of these models, but there are also a few downgrades they could make, or should make. Let me clarify. These models fit on O36 curves, the standard of the space and budget-constrained O-gauge railroader. If Atlas wanted to, there would absolutely be a market for a budget version of these models. Fewer detail parts, same plastic coal load, PS3 installed, and for a few hundred less, these could even fit the bill for a scale-sized O36 starter set. What Bachmann did with their IC 280s in HO and N, Atlas has the room to do here in O scale. But they could also upgrade these Premier versions and rerun them with the few upgrades I touched on previously. And I hope they do. Heck, Atlas, if you're listening, all you need to make these even more appealing to more road names is offer a couple of headlight styles and placements. And the options for road names will just keep going up. The same 2 or 3 headlights and 2 or 3 headlight positions will offer nearly endless expanded options for minimal cost. And if you list more WMH7Bs, perhaps with black roofs and tender decks, or the 1912 logo, I will be the first to get more of these 280s. Okay, one last thing to cover, because I have stumbled on this comparison a few times. Stop comparing these models to the MTH Premier WMH9s. Both models were offered in Western Maryland. Both models are 280s. However, the Atlas model is an Illinois Central 280, and the MTH model is a Western Maryland H9 280. The Atlas model is not even pretending to be an H9. It's representing the Western Maryland's smaller, older H7B class. The H9s were all in the 800s. The MTH H9 modeled for 734 is meant to represent the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad 734, which is a Lake Superior and Ishpeming 280 with a New York Central tender and new paint and parts to represent the Western Maryland Railway's styling better. The 734 is not a Western Maryland engine. The Atlas models are of IC 280s and are numbered for the H7Bs. The MTH models are WMH9s and are numbered for either the H9s or the Western Maryland Scenics 734. So all in all here, I'm extremely happy with these engines. I grew up with an O-scale layout and an HO layout in my father's attic. I had a Bachmann HO scale Illinois Central 280 on that HO layout, a Western Maryland H7B painted Illinois Central 280. So as a Western Maryland fan and someone who had at one time an HO version of these models adorned in Western Maryland plying the rails of my old HO layout, picking these up to continue that legacy onto the rails of my O-gauge railroad seemed almost essential and very gratifying. I genuinely look forward to what Atlas will do with these 280s. Who knows? Maybe these will prove to be the first steps in the expansion of Atlas's Steam offerings into more than just N-scale. Perhaps. One can hope.